the Bermuda Islamic Cultural Center. We understand that there's inclement weather, so we appreciate you guys coming on a work week. Tonight is a auspicious occasion. We are going to be listening to our beloved brother Imam Shadid Muhammad. He's coming in all the way in from New Jersey. And tonight is actually going to be the first lecture series of about 3 lectures that he's going to be doing. Starting tonight, Thursday, we're having another one on Friday, and then another one on Saturday evening, and Sunday as well. So at the end of the program, I will give you a little more details about that, all right, as far as times and locations and so forth and so on. Yeah. So, but before I actually get started, I just want to acknowledge the efforts of One Bermuda Ummah, yeah, for all their work they've done bringing in these lectures and trying to provide an avenue for the Muslims to come together and get a little bit of knowledge that we can use in our daily lives, get us closer to the Deen of Islam. Also, want to acknowledge the assistance and the patronage of Imam Salim Abdul Razak and the Bermuda Islamic Cultural Center for hosting this event tonight. With that said, I'm going to do a quick bio, and then I'm going to pass it over to Brother Shadid Muhammad to...
They read the bio earlier, and it was like way too long.
Oh, you been earlier today?
Yeah.
It's
I was literally cringing. Like, it's cool.
But tell you what, since I've gotten preempted by our guest here, so I'll forgo it for tonight, just so that we can jump straight into this lecture, and then we can move forward. And then on Saturday night, we can do a nice long bio, a super long bio for him, and he won't have no say in that. So we're going to forgo that for tonight, and I just pass it straight over to the Imam Shadid.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. So before I begin, I would like to thank you all for welcoming me to your community. It's a beautiful community. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bestow His blessings, His favor upon you guys and upon your children and upon the environment that you're in, and give you guys and continue to extend to you the ability to spread Islam in this environment as so ripe. I had an opportunity to talk to the high school kids earlier, and they were so receptive, and it just shows that there's still life here. There's still life here. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow you guys to take advantage of that. So in the previous khutbahs that I have been given, I've been covering the story of Luqman and his conversation with his son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala named an entire chapter in the Quran after Luqman. And that wasn't, haphazardly. It wasn't without some deep benefit in it. And everything that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala captured of the conversation between Luqman and his son is important. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the Quran. If you think that this is Luqman and his son, his relationship with his son, and out of all of the years that he lived with his son, out of all of the conversations that Luqman had with his son, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala captured for us just a few lines of one conversation that he had with his son and mentioned it in the Quran. That was not done without some deeper meaning behind it. And it just requires us to reflect a little deeper on the words and on that conversation. So I'm going to kind of go back to that a little bit. The title of our conference for the weekend is Righting the Wrongs. Basically, as Muslims, as we mature with Islam, as we mature in our personal lives, as we mature spiritually, we have to begin to look back at some of the misinformation, some of the misunderstandings, and kind of unlearn some things, right? Imam Ibn Qayyim, rahimahullah ta'ala, has a very beautiful phrase. He said, وَضْعُ الشَّيْء فِي الْمَحَالِ مَشْرُوطٌ بِتَفْرِيقِهِ مِنْ ضِدِّهِ. That in order for you to put something in a place, it has to be void of its opposite. So, for example, water and oil are opposites. you're going to put water in a cup, then the cup has to be void of oil. It has to be void of its opposite. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to maintain that space. You guys following me? So if you're going to replace new information with old, you have to replace old information with new information, then you have to unlearn some of the old information so that we could replace that. As Ibrahim alayhi salam in his conversation with his father, he said, Ya abati, inni qad ja'ani min al-ilmi ma lam ya'tika fattabi'ni ahdika siratan sawiya. He said, oh my father, my beloved father, knowledge has come to me that did not come to you. Meaning I have access to information today that you did not have access to. فَاتَّبِعْنِي, follow me, and I will guide you to the straight path. And this is what they call a growth mindset. All right? And we have to have a growth mindset. I think for a long time in the Muslim community, especially with our elders, with all due respect, I think that in many instances, you'll find it very difficult for many of our elders to be able to receive new information from the younger generation because you believe that you had it all figured out. And while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did bless our elders with the resources that they have, the masajid, the facilities that we have today that were established, the foundation that was established, the generations that come later, we have to leave just a little room that they're going to have with, the increase of technological advancements in society. We have access to information that many of our elders did not have access to. And that's a fact. The Prophet ﷺ said, perhaps the person, رُبَّ حَامِلِ الْفِقْهِ إِلَى مَنْ هُوَ أَثْقَى مِنْهُ, perhaps the person that's carrying the fiqh, carrying the understanding of the religion, is going to pass it on to someone who's going to understand it better than he does. And I would like to think that as the generations come after, that we are, gaining more access, more understanding to things that many of our parents, many of our elders did not have access to. But in order for you to receive information, you have to have a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you're not going to learn anything because you believe that you have it all figured out. So you're fixed in terms of being settled with the information that you have, and you're not going to receive anything else. But a growth mindset is a person who is willing to accept new information, is objective enough to say, maybe you have a good point. Let me, do some more research on that. Rather than saying, no, that's opposite of what I was taught. As Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, Sinfani min al-nas la yastafidani min al-ilm. There's two categories of people that will never learn anything. Al-mustakbir wa mustahi. A person who is arrogant because he thinks he knows everything. Wa mustahi, and a person who is too shy to ask. So you're never going to ask. The Prophet ﷺ said, Alaysa shifa al-ay as-su'al. Isn't the cure for ignorance a question? The cure for ignorance is a question, to ask. But if you're too afraid to ask because you don't want to, look like you don't know, right, then you're never going to learn. So when I look at the conversation between Luqman and his son, I see a conversation between a father and a son. I see a conversation that has the potential to become the blueprint for how we engage our young men in society. All right? So I want to highlight the fact that there are a few conversations in the Quran between fathers and sons. You have the conversation between Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and his father Azar. You have the conversation between Prophet Yaqub and his sons. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala captured for us the conversation, one of the last few conversations possibly that Prophet Yaqub had with his sons while he was on his deathbed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Am kuntum shuhada إذ حضر يعقوب الموت إذ قال لبنيه ما تعبدون من بعدي. That were you present at the time when Prophet Yaqub was on his deathbed? And he said to his sons, how many sons did he have? 12. 12. Binyamin, Yusuf, and then the other 10, right? This is a man, a father, talking to 12 of his sons, all right? I have a little bit more than 12 myself. I have 13 sons. So, having that conversation. It looks crazy when they're young, right? Got all these babies, one in Pampers, one in training underwears. It looks crazy. It looks really dysfunctional. But when you're an old man and your 12 sons are accompanying you to the Eid, 12 soldiers, 12 responsible adults who all are married and have children on their own, you've created an entire nation. So while we look at that while they're young, we say, wow, it looks dysfunctional. But as they get older and they become mature in their respective lives, it looks like you created an entire nation all by yourself. Nonetheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, were you present at the time when Prophet Yaqub was on his deathbed? إِذْ قَالَ لِبَنِيهِ, when he said to his sons, مَا تَعْبُدُونَ مِن بَعْدِي, what are you going to worship after I'm gone? It's a conversation between a father and his sons. So if we go back to the conversation between Luqman and his son, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذْ قَالَ لُقْمَانُ لِابْنِهِ وَهُوَ يَعِظُهُ يَا بُنَيَّ لَا تُشْرِكْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّ الشِّرْكَ لَظُلْمٌ عَظِيمٌ. And remember when Luqman said to his son, Ya bunay, listen how he addresses his son. He said, oh my beloved son. Because if you're going to address a young man, you're going to address him with respect. Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, for the first 7 years, your child is your amir. He is your instructor. He tells you what he wants. When a kid says, I'm hungry, we go buy them something to eat. Kid says, I'm bored, we take you to the playground. They basically instruct us what they want for the first 7 years. He said, and from 7 to 14, he is ready to receive information at that point. Huwa abid. He is your servant, ready to receive information from you. He said, and from the next 7 years, from 14 to 21, huwa waziruk, he is your companion from 14 to 21. And if you're going to address a teenage boy about behavior, that has to be done with respect. Respect for his feelings. Respect for, him growing into an adult. And I think a lot of times we miss the mark because we still look at them as children. We still see them as the babies that we raised. And in our eyes, they will always be that. And then it's kind of like really dismissive of this adult male that we are prepping them to be. So when you look at his conversation with his son, it's with respect. He said, Ya bunay, oh my beloved son. Do not associate partners with Allah. La tushrik billah, inna shirka la dhulmun azim. Do not associate partners with Allah. Indeed, shirk is the greatest form of injustice. It's the greatest injustice. And when you think about, and then of course, all of the conversation, Allah interjects there, and he talks about the respect for the parents, respect for the mother bore him in difficulty on top of difficulty. And then Allah ends that ayat, be grateful to me and be grateful to your two parents, and to me is your return. And if your parents try to fight you to associate partners with me, because the whole entire conversation is centered on the first piece of advice he gave to his son. And that was not to associate partners with Allah, to always put God first, to always put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first. And every other piece of advice after that can always find its root back to that one concept. And I'm going to come back to that. And when you think about that conversation, don't associate partners with Allah. Indeed, shirk, idolatry, is the worst form of injustice. All right? He's teaching his son by his interaction with God, his interaction with Allah, the importance of not being oppressive, the importance of not being unjust. And the greatest form of injustice that we can do is the injustice that we do to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned in the hadith that there is none more patient, وَمَا أَصْبَرَ عَلَى أَذَى سَمِعَهُ مِنَ اللَّهِ, that there is none that is more patient with the harm that he receives, with the injustice that he hears, other than Allah. People associate and attribute partners and children, and yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, يَرْزُقُهُمْ وَيُعَافِيَهُمْ, Allah still continues to provide for them and still continues to give them good health. There's none that is more patient with the injustice that he hears than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Luqman is trying to, plant this seed in the mind of his son that the greatest form of injustice, all other forms of injustice, stem from this injustice. When we look at social injustice, when we look at, domestic injustice between husband and wife, the injustices that go on between spouses. You look at social injustice of racism, of poverty, and all of the other forms of, social injustice. The root of all of that is the injustice that is done to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you think about social marginalization, where a group of people is marginalized from society, from the resources that society has to offer, simply based upon socioeconomic status or race or color. How does that tie back into injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? When Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu became the Khalifa, he got on the minbar and he gave a khutbah. And in his khutbah he said, Al-Qawiyu fikum da'ifun indi hatta akhud haqqa du'afa minhum. He said, those whom you consider strong, wealthy, powerful, are weak in my eyes until I take the right of zakat from them and give it to their respectful owners. Meaning, who? The poor. By you marginalizing people, by you, treating them with subpar status, that goes back to an injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So by denying zakat, not paying zakat, which is the right of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala over our wealth, we are infringing on the right of other human beings. You guys following me? Did I lose anybody? Are you guys with me? You see how that connects? So every other form of injustice stems from the injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the reason why this is important, especially when a man is talking to his son, is because sons are going to go out into the world. Sons are going to be leaders in their respective regard, whether in business, whether in their homes, whatever the case may be, they are going to assume some position of leadership in their lives. And in assuming a position of leadership, they have to understand that their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not independent of their relationship with the rest of the world. And that is a misnomer that we have been, whether consciously or unconsciously, fed in the Islamic community, especially in America, especially amongst African American Muslims. Because we tend to think that my relationship with Allah, my relationship with God, is independent of my relationship with the rest of his creation. Meaning, as long as I establish what I believe is a good relationship with Allah, I can treat and deal with people however I want. Meaning, one has absolutely nothing to do with the other. And we need to unlearn that. Because at the end of this lecture, inshallah ta'ala, I want to give you so many examples that we walk away from this understanding that our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is inclusive of our relationship and is an extension of our relationship with everyone else that we come in contact with, not independently. All right? So you look at the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's interaction with the young men in his community. We can see that his relationship with the young men in his community was centered on building a sense of God consciousness with these young men, so that as they, assume their positions of leadership later on in their lives, that they keep that in mind as they engage other people. As the Prophet ﷺ said to Abdullah bin Abbas, his cousin, who was a young man, and he was sitting on the back of the camel with the Prophet ﷺ, on the back of a donkey. And the Prophet ﷺ said to him, Ya ghulam, inni u'allimuka kalimat. Oh young boy, I'm going to give you some jewels. I'm going to give you some pieces of advice. Pay attention. He said, Ihfadillah yahfaduk. Preserve the rights, the limits of Allah, and Allah will preserve you. Meaning, do not transgress against the limits that have been set by Allah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be there to protect you. Ihfadillah tajidhu tujahak. Preserve the limits, the rights of Allah, the limits that Allah has set for you, and you will always find Allah in front of you. Then he goes on to say, وَعْلَمْ لَوْ أَنَّ الْأُمَّةِ لو اجتمعوا على أن ينفعوك بشيء لم ينفعوك إلا بشيء قد كتبه الله لك. He said, and no, this is a man talking to a young boy. He said, no, that if an entire nation of people gathered together to bring you some benefit, to bring about some benefit in your life, they would only benefit you to the extent of which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already decreed for you to have that benefit. And if an entire nation of people gathered together to harm you with anything, they would only harm you to the extent in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for you to be harmed. That's a very powerful piece of advice to give to a young man. This teaches him to stand on his own 2 feet, not to fear the majority, because we live in an environment today where we believe that the majority is right, which is another farce. Just because the vast majority of people hold a particular opinion or take a particular approach to something does not mean that they are right. Allah says in the Quran that most of the people on earth will lead you astray from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Most of the people will lead you astray from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah called Prophet Ibrahim a ummah, a nation, and he was one man. Inna Ibrahim kana ummatan. That Ibrahim was a ummah, called him a nation, one man, a nation. So that kind of changes things for us. Our perception is a little different as Muslims. Unfortunately, we still function under this, this majority rules type of ideology, this belief. And although we may not say it, but you will always find us, many people, going along with the crowd, despite the fact that what the crowd is doing goes against your better judgment. Am I lying? And sometimes we might find ourselves doing that because we still function with this mentality that, well, if the majority of people are saying this, if the majority of people are doing this, then it must be right. But there are clear evidences from the Quran and the Sunnah that prove differently. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, when the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam died, he said, Wallahi, Wallahi, anyone who denies me zakat that they used to pay to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Wallahi la uqatilannahum. I will fight every single one of them. This was Abu Bakr by himself. The vast majority of the Sahaba were saying to Abu Bakr, as Umar said to him personally, كيف تقاتلهم وهم يقولون لا إله إلا الله. How are you going to fight a people who say لا إله إلا الله? Abu Bakr said, والله لو منعوني عقولا أو إقالا كان يؤدونه إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لأقاتلنهم. He said, Wallahi, if they deny me an iqal, something that they used to wrap around the knee of the camel to keep the camel, something insignificant. Wallahi, if they deny me even an iqal that they used to give to the Prophet ﷺ as zakat, wallahi, I'll fight every single one of them. This is being a leader it means that you don't wait for consensus. You are the consensus. That's what a leader does. A leader is a visionary, somebody who sees things before the vast majority can see it. And in doing so, sometimes you have to step out there despite the way that the vast majority may feel. And then later on, the vast majority, as they catch up, hindsight is 20/20 for some people, right? They catch up later. But you as the leader, as the visionary, you're miles ahead. You can see things that others can't at that moment. And Umar radiallahu anhu kept going back to Umar, trying to convince him that his position was wrong. How are you going to fight the people? These are Muslims. They say, La ilaha illallah. And Umar finally said that I realized, once I saw Abu Bakr, insistent upon his position, I realized at that point that the haqq was with him. The truth was with him. And we were all wrong. He was right. But at that moment, if he didn't have that, audacity to kind of just stand on principle, then he would have just kind of gone with the majority. And you find many of us, this is how we function. Well, the vast majority of people are saying this, and most of the people are saying that. The vast majority doesn't make it right. It's right when it's in accordance with Allah and His Messenger, and it's wrong And that's whether it's one person or 1,000 people. And it's wrong when it conflicts with the book of Allah and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, even if 1,000,000 people saw the same position. And so the Prophet ﷺ's advice to Abdullah bin Abbas, very powerful, you know. And understand, like, not associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is not just don't commit shirk. It's deeper than that. Because when Luqman said to his son, "O my son, do not associate partners with Allah." Indeed, shirk, idolatry, associating partners with Allah is the greatest form of injustice. When we hear shirk, we usually think about it in terms of someone bowing down to an idol, someone worshiping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when a man is telling his son not to associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's deeper than just, not veering off the straight path and worshiping something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this concept of tawheed, of staying away from shirk, it teaches a young man the concept of being goal-oriented. Because now you have a goal, you have a focus. And there's nothing that, is more valuable in the life of a teenage young male than to be goal-oriented. Think about how many children out here are just walking aimlessly. They have no goals in their future, near future, far future, nothing in front of them. You ask them, what's your purpose in life? They have no clue. They believe their purpose in life is finding a good job. I mean, figure that. Your purpose in life is to find a good job, to get married. Those are not purposes. Those are all means to the end. Those are all complementary to your journey. Your end goal is, as Allah says in the Quran, وَاعْبُدَ رَبَّكَ حَتَّى يَأْتِيَكَ الْيَقِينُ. Worship your Lord until death overtakes you. That's your goal. Ibadah. Servitude to God. That is your end goal. Everything else, marriage, good job, all of those things are complementary to your journey. They are not the goal. That's not the goal. You guys follow me? And so when you say don't associate partners with Allah, you are setting a goal for the child. Not only that, it teaches the child to be, principled, to put principle before personality. As they went to the Prophet ﷺ and they offered him, what do you want? You want the prettiest woman in the land? Take a look at all of the women in Mecca. Choose any woman you want, and we'll marry her to you. What do you want? Money? We'll make you the wealthiest man amongst the Arabs. You want status? We'll make you the king of Quraysh. Just stop your preaching. And the Prophet ﷺ told his uncle, he said, Ya ammi, oh my uncle. He said, Wallahi law wada'u ash-shams fi yamini wal qamara fi yasari ala an atruk hadhihi ad-da'wa. He said, if they, wallahi, oh my uncle, if they would have put the sun in my right hand, the moon in my left hand, under the condition that I abandon my mission of calling to the tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will not stop. Listen to his words. I will not stop until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me the victory that he promised me, أو أموت في طلبه, or I die in pursuit of it. It's a man of principle. You understand? He's not budging. And in today's time, many of our children, especially the boys, they're opportunistic. And if that is a very dangerous mindset, to be opportunistic. Because in being opportunistic is being individualistic. Because it's all about you, your goal, what you are trying to achieve. And you'll sell your soul to get it. Any opportunity that presents itself that allows you to get further and further in whatever your journey, whatever you believe your journey is, you will sell your mother out to get it. That's what an opportunist is. He doesn't function on principle. There is no loyalty. The only loyalty is to whatever his or her journey is. That's where the loyalty lies. The loyalty is not in Islam. The loyalty is not to the Muslim community. The loyalty is to my agenda. So in being opportunistic is being individualistic. And that's a very dangerous mindset. And that's where many of our youth are today. Very opportunistic. They'll sell whatever they got to sell to get wherever they got to get. As you know, the Prophet ﷺ predicted that this would happen. He said, "Yabi'u rajul dinahu bi'aradin min ad-dunya," that it will come a time where a man will sell his religion for a share of this dunya. And we see that happening. We see that happening because we have children that are being raised without principles. So Tawheed, not associating partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is a principle. And it makes a child principled. All right? And so therefore they don't put principle before personality. You know, the Prophet ﷺ was a clear example of that. So I want to give you a couple of examples before I conclude of the danger in looking at our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as independent of our relationship with other people. Our relationship with one another, as I've said it time and time again, our relationship with one another is an extension of our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll give you two examples. One is something that happened with one of the Prophet ﷺ companions by the name of Mu'adh ibn Jabal. The narration mentions that Mu'adh, he used to pray Salatul Isha with the Prophet ﷺ, and then he would go to another village in Medina, and he would lead the Salat there in that village. And so on one occasion, he went to go lead the Salat. After praying with the Prophet ﷺ, he went to this masjid to go lead the Salat. And as he stood up to pray with the Jama'ah, he decides to recite Surah Al-Baqarah in Salatul Isha. We just pray Salatul Isha, right? Just imagine, because if the Imam had recited Surah Al-Baqarah, even half of it, we would still be praying right now. And we stopped praying about 30 minutes ago. We would still be praying right now, and he would probably only be still within the first 100 ayats of Surah Al-Baqarah. And Surah Al-Baqarah is 287 ayats. 286 ayats. Can you imagine going to the masjid and the Imam says Allahu Akbar, and then he starts Alif Lam Mim ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. And you're like, what is he doing? He's reciting Surah Al-Baqarah all the way to the end. So one of the companions who was praying along with him decides to leave the rank and go off to the side and pray by himself, and then leave the masjid. After the salat was over, someone brought to Mu'adh's attention that so-and-so left the rank and prayed by himself and then left the masjid. Mu'adh said, huwa munafiq, he's a hypocrite. To add insult to injury. You see the concept here of your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being independent of your relationship with everybody else? You guys get the concept? How? Because Mu'adh thought that me having a desire to recite Surah Al-Baqarah in Salatul Isha, that's what you want. That's what you wanted to do. And while that is great for you to recite Surah Al-Baqarah in any salah, not what it infringes on the relationship of your brothers and sisters in Islam with Allah. You don't have a right to infringe on someone else's journey to God. You don't. You don't want that. And as it stood, once it reached the man that Mu'adh called him a hypocrite, he went and told the Prophet ﷺ. Said, O Messenger of Allah, Mu'adh comes to us, he leads the salah, and he recites Surah Al-Baqarah all the way to the end. And I left the rank and I went off and I prayed and he called me a hypocrite. The Prophet ﷺ's face became red, angry, upset. Because Mu'adh, while great companion, while what he was doing was very virtuous, but not at the expense of someone else's journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't separate your relationship with Allah from your relationship with other people. It's all connected. So when the Prophet ﷺ went to Mu'adh, his face was red. And he said, Ya Mu'adh, fattanun anta. He said, Mu'adh, are you a fitna for people? Are you being a fitna for people? Are you infringing on people's relationships with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You don't have a right to do that. Even if it's under the guise of what you believe is a good thing. Because not everything that is good for you is good for everybody else. No, you don't get to infringe. He said, are you being a fitna for people, Mu'adh? He said, when you stand to leave salat, khaffif anhum, lighten your salat on the people. He said, فَإِنَّ وَرَائِكَ, because praying behind you, al-da'if, those who are weak, al-kabir, those who are elderly, وَذُو حَاجَةٍ, and those who have other things to do. Nobody wants to stand in the masjid for the next 3.5 hours because you want to recite Surah Al-Baqarah. It doesn't work like that. Your relationship with Allah is not independent of your relationship with others. I'll give you one more example. Are we clear about that example? Are you guys clear about the concept? Because oftentimes when speakers speak, they speak and then they get up and they leave as if, I came and I saw and I conquered. No, conquering is making sure that your audience understands the connection that you are trying to make for them. Not walking away believing, mashallah, that was a great lecture. And then when you ask the person, well, what did you really understand from that? They give you some surface, shallow answer or response showing that they really didn't get it. I'm a teacher, so I'm always in teacher mode. So I want to make sure that I don't leave having anyone, have misunderstanding what I'm saying. The second example is an example of a husband and wife, because this often happens in marriages, where a husband or a wife might be very studious, might be very overzealous about, their religious practices in the home. And in doing so, they infringe on the other spouse's journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Almost as if your relationship with Allah is independent of your relationship with everybody. No, it's all inclusive. So in this particular instance, one of the Prophet ﷺ's companions, Abu Darda, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, is married to a woman, Darda. And Abu Darda was an ascetic, zahid, fasting all day, praying all night, this type of guy. And Salman went to go visit him one day. Darda comes to the door, as the narration mentioned, mutabadhila, dressed in shabby clothes. This was before the women wore hijab. So she comes to the door dressed in raggedy clothing. And Salman sees her dressed this way and he asks her, Malaki, what's wrong with you? Why are you dressed like this? It's not your norm. Something's wrong. And she said, Akhuka Abu Darda, laysa lahu haja fi dunya. Your brother Abu Darda, he has no concern for the life of this world. That was a metaphor for spousal neglect. He was neglecting her. So Salman waited around until Abu Darda came home. And Abu Darda was fasting. So Abu Darda served him lunch. And Salman said to him, Ma ana bi'akil hatta ta'kul. I'm not going to eat until you eat. Meaning, break your fast. How you have me over as a guest, serve me food, and then sit back and say, well, I'm not going to eat because I'm fasting. It's rude. This is a supererogatory, voluntary fast. Break your fast and eat with me. And so he eventually broke his fast. Then Salman stayed the night. And after Salatul Isha, Abu Darda went to go pray Salatul Tahajjud, Qiyam al-Layl. Salman said, it's not the time for Qiyam al-Layl. The best time to pray Qiyam al-Layl is the last third of the night, not the beginning of the night. Go to sleep. Go with your wife. So he goes to bed and he tries to get up. Salman said, it's not time to get up. And then he waits to the last third of the night and he gets up and Salman says, Al-an. Now, let's pray. Fasalliya. And they pray together. And after they finish their prayer, Salman turns to Abu Darda, man-to-man conversation. This is another thing that we can't have today because everybody's feelings are so fragile. The moment I say something to you, and even though I'm right for telling you so, you don't want to give now, there's distance between me and you. Now when you see me, the salam is very cold, because I said something to you that rubbed you the wrong way. It's not what I said that offended you. What I said was what you needed to hear. What offended you is the fragility of your emotions. And that's what you need to correct. Don't get mad at me for saying it. Don't get mad at the mirror. Don't get mad at the person holding up the mirror if you don't like the image that comes back to you. That's illogical. If I hold the mirror up to you and you see an image that makes you uncomfortable, do you chastise me and scold me for holding up the mirror? Or do you check yourself because of the image that came back to you? Don't get mad at me. I said something to you that you needed to hear. That's part of my love for you. But we don't see that as love today. When I tell you something that you need to hear, you're offended. Because friendship today is solely based upon agreement. You got to agree with everything I say. You cannot tell me what I need to hear, even though I need to hear it. Where are we going? Umar radiallahu ta'ala said, may Allah have mercy on the person who guides me to my flaws and my mistakes. He made dua. May Allah have mercy on the person who guides me to my flaws and my mistakes. Today, we condemn you to hell for telling the person exactly what they needed to hear. Salman turns to Abu Darda and he gives him some pieces of advice. Showing you here again, what's the concept I'm trying to draw here? Is that your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not independent of your relationship with everyone else. Salman turned to Abu Darda and he said, Inna li rabbika alika haqqa, wa inna li nafsika alika haqqa, wa inna li ahlika alika haqqa, fa'a'ati kulli dhi haqqin haqqahu. He said, indeed, your Lord has a right over you, your body has a right over you, and your wife has a right over you. So give everyone that has a right their rights. Don't give Allah his rights, but in giving Allah his rights, you're infringing on the rights of somebody else. It doesn't work like that. You can't stay at the masjid as the imam. Not talking about you, imam, but I'm just saying as imams, because I was guilty of this at one point in time in my life. And my argument, my excuse was always, but I'm in the masjid teaching. I got to teach the ummah, right? Because as a younger imam, as a younger student of knowledge, we tend to think we got to save the world. And if we don't do it, it's not going to get done. You can save the world tomorrow and the day after. Saving the world is a process, not an event. It's not something that you're going to do tonight, right? That sister's question, that brother's question, you can defer that to another time. You can defer them to another imam. You're not obligated to answer every single question. A man traveled from Spain all the way to Medina to ask Imam Malik a total of 38 questions. Given to him from the people of Spain. Traveled by boat all the way to Medina to ask Imam Malik 38 questions. This is Imam Malik ibn Anas, the Imam of Medina. And he gets to Medina and he asks Imam Malik one question after another. Imam Malik said, Wallahu a'lam. La adri, wallahu a'lam. I don't know, Allah knows best. 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 Until Imam Malik only answered a few questions out of 38. The man said, I came here from Spain to ask you, Imam Malik, al-Jabal, al-Jahbah, this mountain of knowledge. I came here from Spain to ask you 38 questions. And the vast majority of the questions you answered, I don't know, Allah knows best. What am I supposed to go back and tell the people in Spain? He said, go back and tell them, Allah, I don't know, Allah knows best. You are not obligated to answer everybody's question. Do you think Imam Malik did not know the answers? It's a strong possibility he did. But this shows us that you're not responsible for answering every single individual's question. You're not. I can defer you to somebody else. I can defer you to a later time. But we tend to think that I got to save the world. But you cannot be in the masjid all day long, all night long, and then show up at home, expect a hot meal and your wife to be, a hot girl ready to serve you, right? Because, you are the imam in the masjid. You're not the imam at home. At home, you're a father, you're a husband. You serve in a different capacity. You're not the imam at home. But we use that as a justification. But you are infringing on the right of somebody else. Your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not independent of your relationship with other people. So when Salman said to Abu Darda, indeed your wife has a right over you, your body has a right over you, your Lord has a right over you. Then, meaning that you need to learn how to manage all three of those. You have to find a balance. But you can't infringe on the right of one by trying to give the right to someone else. It doesn't work like that. This is why even in Islamic tradition that if a woman wants to fast voluntarily, right, she should seek the permission of her husband. Yeah. A woman should seek the permission of her husband before she decides to fast voluntarily. Why? Question. Why? Because she is going to take a voluntary act of worship, which is great. It's not mandatory, it's voluntary. And she's going to pursue that voluntary act of worship at the expense of a mandatory act of worship, which is to serve her husband. Aisha radiallahu, that means that sexual relations takes precedence over sexual relations, satisfying your husband's sexual desire takes precedent over you engaging in a voluntary act of worship. Tell me our religion is not the best religion in the world. Balance. Balance. There are instances when your right as a man comes before a supererogatory act of worship. This is why Aisha radiallahu anha, she said that I would have days to make up from Ramadan that I would not make up until almost the next Ramadan because of khidmat al-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, serving my husband. Meaning she would miss days in Ramadan, either due to her menstrual cycle or whatever, and then she would have to make those days up. But she would not make them up until almost the next Ramadan because of constantly being in service to her husband. You cannot infringe on the right of someone else in pursuit of, higher levels and degrees of, spirituality. It's all inclusive. And so this is something that we have to unlearn. You have many Muslims today who believe they have great relationships with Allah, and you treat other people like crap. You don't give this one the salam. You don't have any, talk for this person. We'll walk right up into a group of brothers and we'll give this one salam and exclude everybody else. I mean, it's ridiculous. This person says something to you that you don't like, and now you don't give him salam anymore. Talk about this person behind his back because you believe that it's halal because somehow you are justified in doing so. All of this, and we still believe we have a great relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ in ending, he said, Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman, irham man fil ard, yarhamukum man fis sama. Ar-Rahimun, those who are merciful. Yarhamuhum ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, will have mercy upon them. Be merciful to those that are on earth, and the one that is above the heavens will have mercy on you. You see the connection? There's a direct link. Our interaction with one another is an extension of our interaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not independent of our interaction with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah says in the Quran, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامَ, and fear Allah through whom you demand your mutual rights. And I can go on and on and on and on and on and on. So what do we benefit from this? What do we learn from this? We are unlearning. We're not learning. Well, we are learning, but we are learning to unlearn some of the behaviors that we have engaged in. I mean, does any of us as men right here in this room right now, have you ever felt, after knowing what we know now, or it might be a reminder to you that you already knew this before I said this, did you ever find yourself at a point in time or another infringing on the rights of someone else in your pursuit of having a greater relationship with Allah? Does this resonate with anyone? Well, thank you for being honest. I appreciate that. I'm in a room amongst a bunch of men. I would think that we could be honest. The women, they can hear you, they just can't see you. So you don't got nothing to worry about if your wife is over there. But, and I'm sure that, especially our women, that they're, happy that, okay, they're getting it. And we're learning. We're a work in progress. Like, we don't have it all figured out. We're a work in progress. We're trying to figure it out. All right? We're complex beings as humans. We are all imperfect, trying to have a perfect relationship with a perfect religion. That's pretty much it, what it is. And we're going to keep making mistakes. And, alhamdulillah, we hope that, people of knowledge that, come along will be able to, decipher and dissect, our interactions and be able to pinpoint where we went wrong so that we can correct that. All right? As the Prophet ﷺ said that there was no prophet who came before me except that it was a duty upon him to guide his ummah, guide his nation to the best that he knew for them. And that's the role of an imam, that is the role of a student of knowledge, that is the role of a person that's in a position of knowledge and authority. Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for husnul istima', for your good listening. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to follow the best of what we've heard. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to, unlearn the things that we've learned in the past that have, not really benefited us as a community or as families, and to learn how to get better with our practice of Islam. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وسبحانك ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. I don't know if there were any questions. Sitting. Oh, I'm here. However long.
Assalamu alaikum. So we're going to have a brief, about 10 to 15 minutes question and answers. There's been some slips that have been sent over to the sister section. So feel free, sisters, to pass over your questions. And inshallah, the brother will be very liberal and generous with his answers and help you once to his answers. So again, any brothers have any questions, feel free to pose them.
Yeah, I'm listening.
I find it interesting that Luqman was talking to his son. What I got out of it was like her lately, I'm more or less trying to build a relationship with my daughters by calling every day. And I think Luqman, from what I'm learning from listening to your stuff, is that he had built that relationship with his son. So he had his ear from the get-go. You get me what I'm saying? Like, he had that relationship where he could give him that advice.
Right.
It's like, so basically right now we're trying to right the wrong. So what we're trying to do is, I think what I'm trying to get from what you're saying is that we have to try to go back and undo some stuff to get to the right stuff, and try to get our kids back, just for example, try to build that relationship so we could get our children's ear and bring them back into the spiritual way of things.
Yes, absolutely. We've all done, I mean, parenting doesn't come with a handbook. There might be books that have been written, great books that have been written on parenting, but that's in general. Your relationship, your specific relationship with your children, there is no handbook for that. And so in trying to be the best parents that we can be, we're going to make mistakes. But when we realize that we've been doing something wrong, we have to unlearn that behavior and then correct it. So, and to your point is that Luqman had a rapport with his son. And perhaps before parents go with this self-righteous, talk with their children about, their religious relationship or their relationship with their religion, perhaps establish a rapport with the child first. How about, how you doing? How's your health? How's your family? I miss you. I love you. Before you start saying, are you still praying? You still wearing your hijab? Like, stop with the religious stuff from the beginning. It's not healthy. Because it seems like it's the only thing that we are concerned about with our children is their relationship with Islam, their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And while you think that is great, before you can begin, disseminating your advice, which a lot of times comes from this place of privilege, before you go that route, establish a rapport. Sometimes we do it to one another in Islam, right? You haven't seen a brother in a week in a masjid. Then when you finally see him, Assalamu alaikum, where you been, brother? It's like First of all, don't ask me where I've been. I'm a grown man. I don't owe you an explanation for where I've been. Second of all, how you doing? Is everything okay? How's your family? How's your health? It's like it's very insensitive. Establish a rapport with the person first. And once you do that, the person doesn't mind, engaging you and doesn't take offense when you engage them. So, and this is especially with our children, especially our children who, have gone astray, children who have, strayed away from the path. And you haven't, had a conversation with your son or your daughter in a while, there's some rifts in your relationship because of their seemingly lack of respect for Islam. How about establishing just a human relationship with the child first? Establish a human relationship with the child first. The Prophet ﷺ said about Fatima bid'atun minni. وَيُؤْذِينِي مَا أَذَاهَا. He said, Fatima is a part of me. It's a part of me. And what hurts her hurts me. When you see your children as an extension of yourself, you deal with them with mercy and compassion. But when you see your children as just some kids that I gave birth to put them on the path, the straight path, and now they strayed from the path, so somehow my relationship with them is just really irrelevant and obsolete, you've completely removed the human component to the relationship, which is what makes them receptive to begin with. Who's going to be receptive when the first thing you say to me, so you still praying? You're establishing your salat, right? It's just like, that's my personal relationship with God. You don't have a right to ask me, am I still establishing my salat? If it's time for salat and you say, hey, son, it's time for salat, you want to pray? He might say, yeah, Dad, come on, let's pray. Alhamdulillah. You open that door for them. Hey, it's time for salat. You want to pray with me? Alhamdulillah. If he says, nah, I'll pray when I get home. Okay, cool. Just make sure you pray when you get home, inshallah. No pressure. No shame. No embarrassment. You understand? Because those are the things that chase children away. Those are the things that make children say, see, that's why I don't like talking to you. Everything, your entire relationship with me is based upon my relationship with Islam. I kid you not. I'm sure there's children right now listening to this like, Allahu Akbar. I'm glad he said it. I'm sure there's children right now listening to this or who will listen to this and say, Allahu Akbar. That means your entire relationship with your children is based on their relationship with Islam. That's a problem. I have a problem with that. Because whether the child prays, whether the child wears hijab, they're still your child. They're still your child. They still require mercy, still require compassion, still require understanding. Because those are the things that lead them to possibly coming back to Islam. And if you care that much about the child, get up at the third of the night and pray for the child. And give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the power to guide the child back. You don't guide, as Allah told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about his own uncle. إِنَّكَ لَا تَهْدِي مَنْ أَحْبَبْتَ وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَهْدِي مَنْ يَشَاءُ. You cannot guide whom you love. But Allah guides whom He wills. You don't guide whom you love. But Allah guides whom He wills. That's not your job to guide. Allah told the Prophet ﷺ, are you going to force people until they become believers? Are we doing that with our children? You're going to force them until they believe? You're going to force them until they pray? You're going to force her until she wears hijab? You're going to keep pressuring her, putting pressure on her until she puts the hijab on? Even if she put the hijab on just to please you, you still have not achieved your goal. Your goal is to connect her to God. She puts on the hijab because she loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not because she loves you. Here's something that we probably don't want to hear. I'm sure there's a lot of parents right now listening to me right now, cringing, grabbing onto your hijabs and your khimars because you couldn't believe that I stated the obvious. Your daughter does not wear hijab to please you or to earn your love. Your daughter wears hijab to earn the pleasure and love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if that's what we are encouraging our daughters to wear hijab for, then why are you getting your feelings when she doesn't wear it? Because it's not about you. Remove yourself from the equation. It's not about you. The hijab has nothing to do with you. Yeah, you raised her. Yeah, you taught her the value of hijab, but now that's her journey. It's for her to take it from here. Has nothing to do with you. All right, so I hope that, sorry for the rant, but I thought it was appropriate there. Question says, how do you respond to people who feel that as long as they are fulfilling their obligations to Allah, that they are doing their duty? How do you motivate fellow Muslims to do more? To how do you encourage someone to support others in their journey? I think we kind of answered that, right? I think that was included in what we talked about. Sometimes people have a holier-than-thou approach to Islam. I think we kind of answered that. How do we know that we feel someone needs to hear is the correct thing to do? By telling them we have to be clear on our true motives for doing so. At times it may be the best to withhold what we feel someone needs to hear. A very slippery slope in my opinion. Well, the thing is that to say, well, I don't know, I don't think this is the right time to say this to the person. Yes, that's part of our religion, to use diplomacy. To use diplomacy is siyasa. It's part of human behavior to know when to say something, to know when not to say something, but to totally avoid saying something at all, I don't think that that's a good idea, solely based upon whether or not the person is going to be in their feelings when they hear it. As the scholars, they have a saying, a rule or a principle, kitman al-ilm an waqt al-haja, haram. Withholding knowledge at a time when it is necessary is haram. You should not withhold. If they need to hear that, we can deal with your feelings afterwards. I can tell you I'm sorry for saying it like that. I didn't mean it like that. I can, put Band-Aids, on the affected area. But at the same token, I'm, at least for me anyway, I'm one of those people that, if I have a close relationship with you and it's something serious that you need to hear, I'm going to pick the right time. I'm going to pick the right place, but you're going to hear it without a doubt. I'm never the type to just avoid saying something to someone because of how it's going to make them feel. That's something that's part of the process. We have to deal with that. We have to deal with it. It's just a matter of how you say it, when you say it, all of the other external factors. But the fact of the matter is the person needs to hear it. And to not tell them probably would be more sinful than to say it and hurt their feelings. Allahu A'lam.
Sorry, what was that? Withholding information is haram.
Withholding information at a time when it is necessary. Kitman al-ilm and waqt al-haja. Withholding information at a time when it is necessary. For example, if someone accuses you of something and they say that they have proof and they bring this person and the person says, yeah, didn't you tell me that you, and the person says, nah, I didn't see it. Now that's going to make me look like a liar when in fact you told me before, you witnessed. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is a time when your witness is necessary and you're withholding the information, and rather than addressing the brother or addressing the situation, you're withholding information so that you can save face and repair your relationship with him later on. That's not cool. Yeah.
That story you mentioned about Allah knows best or Imam Malik, right? I'm sure there's some wisdom there from the side of the people's service community, his community. But was there like a little bit more context there to maybe the questions he asked? I'm just trying to understand from the perspective of the guy who did travel from Spain. He's got to go back, teach his community. Like, was there more to that story?
Not that I know of.
People elaborated on it, right?
Not that I know of. The narration is usually mentioned in terms of a person of knowledge. The context is that the person of knowledge is not necessarily required to answer every single question. And it goes along with the principle that saying I don't know is half of knowledge. So being in a position of knowledge and, answering questions, you should know that there are some things that even though you know the answer to, it would be humbling to say, I don't know. But to answer every single question would really put you in a very peculiar situation, because now that everybody can see that you can answer all these questions, guess what you're going to do? You're going to open the door for more questions. But when you humble yourself, then it keeps a balance. It keeps a balance there. And we should know when to humble ourselves. Yeah.
Okay. So basically,
I'm not a sheikh.
Okay.
No, I don't deal with the titles sheikh, scholar. I've never called myself a scholar. I've never called myself a sheikh. I'm Muslim. Just a Muslim with some information.
So, you made me miss one.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just had to throw that disclaimer out there. I'm not one of those people that seek validation from titles. It doesn't really.
You was basically talking about another thing I got on it was accountability, like taking stock of stuff too. So we could bridge the gap between making somebody fall out of Islam. So we have to look in the mirror and be accountable for our actions. So we keep that balance between Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the whole realm. Am I correct? Or can you elaborate on that?
Can you no? Can you repeat that again?
Basically, we have to be accountable for what we say. With Derry, and you said about slamming brothers, and I don't want to speak to that brother, hills and their ranks. Just trying to live an Islamic spirit, but we have to be accountable for our actions. Like every day, me personally, I try to look at myself and say, okay, let me try to be better than what I was yesterday, today. Be accountable for ourselves, so we can keep that connection and try to keep that balance. That was what I sort of got out of what you've been saying tonight.
Yes.
Try to empty ourselves and be prepared to take the criticism, humble ourselves, and sort of somebody puts that mirror up in front of your face, like you said, and tells you something that you don't want to hear, but it's the truth. Can you elaborate on that, Philip?
I think you pretty much said it. You said it already. Self-accountability. Yes. We have to always be self-reflective, take accountability of ourselves all the time. Absolutely. Our statements, our actions, how they affect people. Yes, absolutely. As I like to use the phrase, leave people better than when you found them. When we cross paths with one another, when our lives intersect with one another, we are at a particular place. The person that our lives intersect with is at a place. And no matter how bad that place is, when we finish crossing paths with that person, at very least, it should not make their lives any worse than what they were already, experiencing. We leave people better than what we found them. That way, I'm either going to elevate you and make you better, or at very least, I'm not going to make you worse than what you are. I'm not going to add to, your feelings of, disgruntlement, or your feelings of disappointment, your feelings of frustration. I don't want to add to that, and always being accountable of, your actions. Umar radiallahu anhu, I know he used to talk to himself. And on one occasion he said, while talking, one of the Sahaba overheard him talking to himself. And he said, Ya ibn Khattab, tattaqiyanna Allah, la yu'adhibuk Allah. O son of Khattab, you are either going to fear Allah or Allah is going to punish you. He's having a conversation with himself. If you study Umar, I do this with my sixth graders. We're studying the story of Prophet Musa, and we have a box that I put on the board, and basically Musa's personality profile. So as we're going through his story, every time we come across a quality or characteristic of Musa, we put it in the box. And so we have just a list of all of the things, the qualities that make up his personality, just to give them a better idea of, because Musa's character was a lot like Umar radiallahu anhu. Very self-reflective. They had a high sense of justice. Didn't like to see oppression. Don't like to see people taken advantage of. Very self-reflective. When you think about Musa, when he killed the guy, and he goes and he's, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. He's very self-reflective. He's thinking about his actions and concerned about that. Umar radiallahu anhu the same exact way. So yes, we should be accountable. And the best accountability is self-accountability. And as the scholars say, that if you are a person who holds yourself accountable, then you never have to worry about somebody else holding you accountable. People who hold themselves accountable never have to worry about somebody holding up a mirror to them, because you do that all the time for yourself. And maybe we need more of that self-reflection. But when you have a whole society full of narcissists and sociopaths, nobody's self-reflection is out the window. And this is what we have today in our society. We have a generation of sociopathic, narcissistic personality disorders, entitled individuals that, I can infringe on your life because I can. And I don't ever have to take a look at what I did or what I said or how I made you feel. That's your responsibility. I'm right. And it doesn't work like that. We should always be, mindful. Even the Prophet ﷺ, sometimes, if he infringed on someone or any of the other Sahaba infringed on someone, he would always, reflect when he said to the companion, "You're Sahib al-Udunayn, you're the companion of two big ears," and he was offended. And he went to the Prophet ﷺ and said, I took offense to that. And the Prophet ﷺ, he corrected that. The other incident when they were going to perform Umrah, and he was already in the state of Ihram, and the guy was hunting, and he bought the Prophet ﷺ some of the meat, and the Prophet refused to take the meat from him because, he was in the state of Ihram, and as a pilgrim, you're not allowed to hunt or assist anyone who is hunting. So the Prophet, min baba ihtiyat, just playing it safe, just told the guy, "Nah, I don't want the meat." And the guy walked away with his head down. The Prophet realized that him denying, although he was right in denying it, he's looking at how it affected him. And he told the Sahaba, "Move up." And he pulled his horse alongside. So he's galloping right alongside of him. And he said, "Do you know why I denied you the meat? Not because I didn't want it, but because, you were hunting, and I don't want to ruin my pilgrimage. I don't want to ruin my umrah, by taking the meat and possibly infringing on my ihram." And, it lifted the guy up. It made him feel better. At least you took the time to explain to the person. There's empathy there. And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Being aware of how your actions affect other people, right? Especially the people that we love, because love doesn't translate into pain. Love doesn't have to be painful, and we definitely don't want to hurt the ones that we love. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. You guys have been great. I can go on and on. We'll be here until Fajr. I promise you. Jazakumullah khairan. I appreciate you guys giving me your time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you and reward you generously. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam tasliman kathira. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Thank you for the questions. Thank you, dear brother, for taking time to answer us and not saying Allahu. Appreciate that. With that said, I just want to do some housekeeping before we move on. We're going to be having some food for those who are hungry, so please stay behind.